Ngiyathokoza ngahlala phasi. Honorable members, I will now ask the secretary to read the order.
Debate on vote number 16, basic education.
Thank you. I will now invite the Honorable Minister of Basic Education, Mamumtsecha.
Honorable Chair, colleagues, cabinet members and deputy ministers present, honorable members of parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Chair, indeed, today we're presenting the 2023-2024 budget vote 16, fully mindful of the reality that at the heart of any development within the basic education sector must obviously be about what learners learn. And this point is clearly articulated in our action plan, in the NDP, in our regional commitments, but also on SDG 4. It continues to be of great significance for South Africa's development that learning outcomes, according to reliable standard testing programs such as SACMEC, PILS, TIMS, that they have demonstrated continuously that our system is improving. But equally, the devastating effects of COVID-19 pandemic on teaching and learning since 2020 continue to be a cause of great concern. Chair, I've already requested our researchers to analyze the impact of COVID-19 on our basic education system, the lost ground, and the return of schooling system to its earlier improved trajectory. And according to Professor Martin Gustafson, by the end of 2021, the average grade 4 learners could read, and therefore there has been a loss of almost a year of learning from COVID-19. And these losses, they report, are similar to what has been witnessed around the world. Honorable members, you will recall that after PILS 2016 was released, the basic education sector embarked on a variety of interventions to improve the foundations of learning through reading, and these interventions were introduced under the slogan of Read to Lead. During the 2018 State of the Nation address, again, His Excellency, the President Ramaphosa, decreed that learners must be able to read for meaning by the age of 10. And DBE, assisted by its partners, including the NECT, immediately responded to the President's call by coordinating broad consultations with critical stakeholders in the reading space. The product of these consultations was a national reading strategy, which we launched in 2019. On Tuesday, 16th May 2023, DBE, like all other departments, education departments worldwide, received a report on the 2021 PILS, which is Progress in International Reading Literacy. PILS is coordinated on a 5-year basis by IEA, and it is a global standard and monitoring achievement test, a very important test on the transition point in learners' development as readers. It is also important to know that PILS 2021 is the first international large-scale assessment to report results after successfully collecting data post-COVID, assessing 400,000 learners in 57 countries, and South Africa was one of the 3 countries that participated in the program, including Morocco and Egypt. So from the continent, there were only the 3 of us. PILS 2021 summarized the state of global learning poverty, which is defined by the share of learners who cannot read with meaning at the age of 10. It did indicate that by 2019, learning poverty was estimated at 57%. Post-COVID, it surged to 70% and 86% for sub-Saharan Africa. So the overall reading scores of grade 4 learners who participated in PILS dropped from 320 points to 288 points. Our grade 4 girls performed better than the boys. And again, the very same exercise assessed learners in grade 6. It also confirmed that our learners achieved a score of 384 points, with girls attaining 408 points and boys attaining 359 points. The noticeable upward shift between grade 4 and grade 6 and grade 9 systematically checked is an indication that the system self-corrects when learners stay longer in schools and retain performance. But because we take that national and regional international assessment quite seriously, we've agreed with the Deputy Minister and the sector that we will be embarking on report back sessions with key stakeholders to again study and understand the COVID results. But whilst acknowledging the devastating effects of COVID-19, these assessment studies continue to sharpen our understanding and plans on improving our performance on reading for meaning. The researchers and experts from government and research institutions confirm that indeed, reading for meaning is a very complex exercise, as it involves a number of interlaced variables which range from teaching skills, teaching resources, learner and teacher well-being, parental and societal support, cultural context, and nuances in the child's journey. But we can confirm again, Chair, that unlike the alarm that is all over, our kids can read in terms of oral, what you call oral performance. But what they are not able to do, and not only as the only children in the world, it's to be able to do all these other skills that are required at a higher level. So our continuous consultations from the lessons learned from the regional and international assessment, there is an emerging view that we should also reduce the 10 pillars that we have to really link them up only to teachers, literacy, age-appropriate cultural material, and involvement of parents. Let me go back to the budget, Chair, having spoken about PILS. Speaker and honorable members, allow me to highlight the following in relation to budget vote 16 of basic education. Firstly, the overall budget for 2023-2024 allocation for the department is 31.8 billion, which is an increase of 7%. We've been allocated 538.8 million for administration. We've been allocated 3.5 billion for curriculum, policy and support. We've been allocated 1.5 billion for teacher education. Planning, information and assessment has been given 16.6 billion. The education of educational enrichment services has been allocated 9.5 billion. And secondly, Chair, we also have been allocated conditional grants, which are grants which go to different agencies and provinces, which has increased with 9.5 billion. For maths and science, we've been given 433 million. For infrastructure delivery, we've been given 13.9 billion. For accelerated school infrastructure, we've been given 2.1 billion. For HIV and AIDS, we've been allocated 241.7 billion. For the National School Nutrition Program, we've been allocated 9.2 billion. For learners with severe to profound intellectual disability, we've been allocated 260 million. Thirdly, there are also earmark funds that are given to the sector. Of the earmark funds, which have increased with 6.3 billion, Funza Lushaka gets 1.3 billion, Umalusi gets 162.9 million. The National Senior Certificate Learner Retention gets 58.1 million. The National Education Collaboration Trust is allocated 121 million. Workbooks, which include Braille workbooks for visually impaired learners, has been given 1.1 billion. And South African Council of Educators has been given 15.6 million. The Presidential Employment Stimulus Package has been given 6.9 billion. And for ICT technologies, we've been allocated 14.4 million. For early childhood education, in addition to the allocated funds, which still reside with social development, we've been allocated 200 million. Chair, we must remind this House and the nation at large about the 6 basic education sector priorities we had committed ourselves to, in order to be able to continue laying a very solid foundation for a quality and efficient education system, as well as to contribute to providing permanent solutions to the architecture of the education and training system in our country. And because of time constraints, Chair, I leave the details to the Deputy Minister. But I just want to focus on the early childhood development, that since the function has been shifted from social development, DBE, we have been hard at work in the process of crafting and implementing an innovative strategies to strengthen the foundations of learning. The department has conducted a number of studies, the national census on early learning programs in 42,000 ECD centers known in our country. And the census highlighted the vast access challenges in South Africa, and we're in the process of developing a new publicly planned, coordinated, and funded mixed ECD provision model, which is based on our social inclusive principles of access, equity, redress, inclusivity, efficiency, and quality. And to regularize the aligned function, we are working with the Department of Social Development to amend the Child Act, but we've also worked with the Presidency Red Tape Reduction Team to identify areas of streamlining registration processes and enabling collaboration with local government. The second study that we conducted, Chair, is that what we call Thrive by 5 index baseline. To assess the quality of ECD programs in a nationally representative sample. The study revealed that only 45% of our children in the country are currently attending ECD programs. Those that are attending, only 45% of them are on track. 45% reveal that these children who are attending these programs will not thrive by the time they reach the age of 5, and 6% of them are chronically stunted and also have major malnutrition. And the third study we also conducted, Chair, in collaboration with the National Treasury and the World Bank, is the Public Expenditure and Institutional Review, which determines the funding on ECD programs by the different spheres of government and the different departments on the prioritized ECD outcomes. Clearly, the current model of funding ECD programs as NPOs must be reviewed. ECD programs must ensure that the children are ready to enter formal schooling. Therefore, it is important to have a new holistic and inclusive model, which includes all committees of trust in the ECD space, state departments whose line functions and direct constitutional obligations link them to children. So, honorable members, the other priority is also a cluster of critical topics from our request to strengthen our curriculum, focusing on the implementation of a curriculum and skills and competencies of a changing world in public schools. It is known that the department has taken a bold and strategic decision to actively move from a predominantly academic curriculum to one that is varied and inclusive. This groundbreaking move came in the form of the introduction of multiple pathways education delivery approach of the 3-stream curriculum model. This was primarily driven by the department's quest for responsive curriculum to the demands of a rapidly changing education skills and development sector of the 21st century. Significant trends have so far been made in the introduction of critical aspects of this innovative program. The introduction of the 2 additional teaching and learning routes, the vocational and occupational stream, has created additional learning pathways towards the attainment of the national senior certificate in the schooling system. But critical milestone realized in the 3-stream curriculum, Chair, is that 35 occupational and vocational subjects with their learning and teaching support materials for implementation in 74 schools has been piloted. This year, we've increased the number to 1,000 with 104 public, ordinary, and focus schools selected. Parallel to our quest to strengthen the curriculum in the general education band, it has been also the piloting of the general education certificate. This general education certificate, which is an integral qualification in the implementation of the 3-stream curriculum model, was initially piloted for assessment in 277 schools. We've increased the pilot to 1,000, included in the 1,126 schools of skills. And we are working with the Department of Higher Education to ensure articulation. And our other priority, Chair, which I want to highlight is about the school infrastructure, which is delivered through the Education Infrastructure Grant. In some province, this education infrastructure grant is augmented with respective provinces equitable shares allocation in addition to the work that is done by DBE. But I'd like to really move quickly and really speak about what I think is a concern of most South Africans on the question of the sanitation appropriate for schools, which was launched in 2018. So in 2018, we initially counted 3,898 schools that needed assistance. When we went to verify, we confirmed 3,398. Already 2,722 schools have been provided with sanitation appropriate, and 673 are remaining, and can confirm that in this financial year, it will be completed. Following critical evaluation of the infrastructure challenges and lessons learned from previous delivery strategies, the department has crafted an infrastructure 10-point plan to accelerate the rollout of schools infrastructure. And this strategy was recently workshopped and adopted by the Council of Education MECs. Again, I won't go through all the details, but I can say that CEM recommended that the department with its provincial counterparts must establish dedicated work streams, which among other tasks should focus on the preparation for school infrastructure, procurement documents, ensure alignment of designs and specification of schools infrastructure, develop school norms and standards, advise on recruitment of skills, and ensure that the maintenance of schools, which is another major problem, is a norm, and develop compliant approaches on the enforcing consequence management. Chair, I've noted that with this plan, the sector will go a long way in addressing the serious challenges the sector faces in school infrastructure. So in conclusion, Chair, as a nation, we must continue to celebrate the class of 2022 for clearly demonstrating that with dedication, focus, resilience, and work hard, the sector will recover from COVID-19 setbacks, rebuild better, and reboot itself to its pre-COVID trajectory. As we continue to confront our ongoing challenges in the sector, which include but not limited to learner performance, schools and office district infrastructure, resource constraints, school safety of learners, learner and teacher well-being, parental involvement, the sector is indeed, Chair, poised to face its challenges. We must always remember, and I hope members, the holders that were in the DA can listen. Dr. Mukubu Magubani once told us, the future is embedded in the past, as the present bears imprint of the past. And we have seen the observations, we have seen this observation in PILS 2021, where the performance of Afrikaner and English learners is recorded highest compared to African languages because of what? Of the past, which bears its imprints also on the current. So in conclusion, Speaker and honorable members, allow me to thank our local, regional, and continental international partners, our sister departments and their state institutions, business and civil society organizations for their selflessness and professionalism in the variety of roles they continue to play in the sector. I wish to single out SACE, Umalusi, NECT, our various teacher organizations, the National School Governing Body Associations, the Principals Associations, national organizations responsible for learners with special needs, as well as independent schools associations for their partnership and support in the sector. We wish to thank you, Chair, also the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, the WIPARI, and the honorable members and chairperson of our honorable members of the portfolio, for their engagement and guidance. We cannot forget to acknowledge the honorable MECs in our provinces, their respective heads of department, and their officials for their counsel and dedication to the cause. Finally, I wish to thank my Deputy Minister, Dr. Regina Mohaule, the Director General and his team, the entire ministry staff, my family for their ongoing cooperation and support. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, before I call on the next speaker, I just want to highlight that the monitor that was supposed to guide you in terms of time is still, we are still working on it. It's not connected. I don't know what the problem is, but we are trying to sort it out. But at the same time, we have our own time here. So it will only be you who's disadvantaged down there, but please, don't worry. No, don't worry. I never cheated. I actually give you more time most of the time. So don't worry about it. Honorable members, we now recognize the chairperson of the portfolio committee, Honorable Mbinko Kigaba.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you very much. Let me greet the minister, the deputy minister, the members of the ANC that are here, and those that are watching us. Chairperson, notwithstanding that progress in the basic education sector requires meticulous efforts and focus on the 6th Parliament mandate, the NDP targets, the MTSF priorities. I stand to proceed by citing that, and I quote, basic education is a national priority, and every child is a national asset that deserves quality education. The ANC has placed education as an apex priority for self-liberation. We have a duty to empower the people to reach their full potential as envisaged in our constitution. The Portfolio Committee on Basic Education considered the budget vote 16 together with the Basic Education 2023-24 annual performance plan and its statutory bodies, which is Umalusi and SACE. Chair, allow me to start with the intended impact of legislative interventions of the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill. A bill that will transform the landscape of the education system in South Africa. The bill seeks to enhance the organizational efficiency of the basic education system to improve school governance, leadership, and accountability, transforming education services and protecting vulnerable groups to ensure learner well-being and access to learning. The Portfolio Committee activities from 2022-2023 and 2023-2024 put a strategic focus on the processing of the bill. The process has provided members of parliament with an opportunity to list, to discuss, to reflect, and deliberate on the key aspects of the bill. Key issues emanating from the bill were raised and highlighted, and we ensured the public that they are going to get an opportunity to make their views and voices to be heard. As per the legislative mandate of Parliament to enhance public participation, the committee has done progressively well to invite the public to make written and oral submissions. We invited the public to Parliament for oral hearings in November 2022, and from February 2022, the committee has embarked on provincial public hearings. To date, we have completed about 6 provinces, and we are left with 3. And I must say that we are going to deliver that process here, very solid as the ANC. The committee, also, you are led by us, keep quiet. The committee also received briefings on key priorities, including the outcomes of the NSC examination results. The results have improved, and the Department of Basic Education, the minister, the deputy minister, the learners, the teachers, and school support must be commended for a progressive improvement on the NSC results. Honorable Chair, over the last 4 years, in line with the committee mandate, the committee has conducted monitoring and oversight visits to all provinces, focusing on the state of school readiness. Our major focus was on status of school infrastructure, the grants, water and sanitation. This August House will recall that during COVID-19, it negatively impacted schools and we had to spend time on curriculum recovery as per the state of the nation policy priority. As the committee, we can confirm to the House that issues of delivery and learning and teaching materials were made available with the exception of a few which were deliveries which were late. The ICT is in the plan. However, it's still a challenge for the DPE to ensure that all schools have ICT. We need to continue to strengthen our ICT development and protect our schools and learners from the ranges of theft of ICT and devices. Regarding improvement in progress and in mathematics, science, and technical subjects, to address the skills for a changing world, there are milestones that the department is achieving. However, maths and science is an area where learners need resources the most for improvement in the subjects. Teachers are trying more efforts. They need resources to most for improvement. They are trying more efforts to train and to retrain them in the STEM subjects in one of the key recommendations that the portfolio committee has raised. In the recommendations, the committee has also raised the issue of school safety against vandalism and the safety of our children and teachers. To this end, we had recommended that schools should consider a partnership with the local South African police services. On Umalusi, the committee also put focus on Umalusi as a basic education public entity. As per briefing and quarterly reports, the entity is doing very well in terms of performance. If one looks at Umalusi budget, the original approved budget amounted to 187.7 million. This budget consists of DPE 162 million, which is 86%, which is the grant, and 25 billion, which is 14%, which is their own revenue. As of 28 February 2023, the DPE grant was received in total and 30 million of their own income. Umalusi will therefore exceed its annual revenue budget. One of the recommendations which was raised as the committee is that Umalusi budget allocation where possible needs a financial increase. To ensure that the department look cognizance of the portfolio committee recommendations made during oversight visits, the committee conducted a follow-up oversight in line with the feedback mechanisms on provinces visited, as well as to get update on the status report regarding implementation of committee recommendations as an oversight visit, which we had in KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape in February 2021. Now, when we look into the department's budget, Chair, the department updated the committee on school infrastructure, the provision of learner support material, facilitating supply of teachers, implementation of the early childhood development function from social development sector, and providing nutritious meals for learners through the National School Nutrition Program. The budget allocation for the department increased by 3.3% from 28.5 billion to 30 billion in 2023-2024, with transfers and subsidies accounting for 84% of the budget. Regarding infrastructure, despite the perennial challenges of old infrastructure, there's a need for infrastructural interventions. The education infrastructure grants and school infrastructure backlogs grant account for 51.8% of the budget over the MTF period. This is the extent in which infrastructure is prioritized by the Department of Basic Education. The committee had recommended that there were infrastructure backlogs and delays that the department fast track the project completion targets. During the oversight visit that we had in Herigwala, and I want to refer to 1 and 2 examples where a school called Mhlaba Combined Schools needed immediate interventions. We want to acknowledge the response of the department to deal with the issue while we were still in the province. The committee also indicated that more proper classrooms should be built while the school, while they use the mobile classroom at that moment. On the aspect of eradication of pit latrines, which is made an issue, and increasing access to water, Let us remind you that the department gave a detailed overview of the progress on the following key deliverables. In respect of the following ASIDI overall progress, which will have 350 sanitation projects and will also build 9 new schools. In the last 2 weeks, the committee had a briefing with the KZN department, in particular on the issue of pit latrines. Chair, the pit latrines came as far back as the apartheid regime. We are dealing with a perennial system that was left behind by a government that did not address issues of sanitation and access to water for particular a black child.
Order.
The committee noted that our schools face the challenge of water shortages. And the committee advised the department to consider installing boreholes
Order, members.
in schools and put aside the budget to deal with these issues. We are dealing with your leakers, your grandfather's leakers here. On
Order. Miss Honorable Gigaba, please. Honorable members, I can't hear you more than the speaker on the podium, please. Proceed.
On the eradication of pit latrines, the engagement we had with departments, starting with KZN, is that 192 projects are on construction stage and are anticipated to be completed by the 31st March 2024. Other provinces' plans are in the pipeline. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Notata, Paishangelapho.
What's too much working? Have it there. Okay. Chairperson, as we debate the basic education budget vote, we must remember that quality education is the most powerful tool to realize opportunity. It is a tool that children can use to end poverty and unemployment, despite the circumstances of their birth, geography, race, or gender. But listening to Minister Muchecha this week has left me feeling like Alice in Wonderland. While South African learners cannot read for meaning, while they attend schools in unsafe environments without food, while they sit in overcrowded classrooms with overworked and underqualified teachers forced to teach a curriculum unresponsive to economic opportunity, the department seems to have no plans in place to turn the situation around to save this generation. They make many promises, but there's little actual impact on the ground. This is nothing new. During Minister Muchecha's first term, I was impressed by some of her reforms: a new curriculum, new text workbooks, and new assessments. But Minister, you indeed have run out of steam and ideas. The polls results released on Tuesday are just but an example. 1 in 5 grade 4 children cannot read for meaning in any language. More than half of grade 6 children can't read for meaning when tested on grade 4 levels. These tests show that we have lost a decade of progress. You see, Minister, the thing is with surveys of achievements is that they don't care what you say you've done. They just measure what children actually know. And what they revealed was devastating. Minister, if children can't read, they are doomed before they even begin. The COVID-19 pandemic is not wholly to blame either. These devastating outcomes are of your own making. Your department closed schools for far too long and didn't have plans while they were shut. 75% of learners who attended no-fee schools lost 50 to 75% of their learning time in 2020, then 25% in 2021 because of your department. Even the Ministerial Advisory Committee, packed with experts, advised the DBE in July 2021 to send all learners back to school immediately. But this too was ignored and rotational timetables continued for another 6 months. Even when the DA took your department to court to end rotational schooling, you resorted to name calling and thought we were grandstanding. But in fact, we knew the devastating effects of your inaction. Most sensible countries have announced huge catch-up programs. Chile has detailed a 4-year plan, not South Africa. Currently, there's no budgeted national catch-up plan, just talk. The DBE's drips and drabs are a disgrace. Talking about free websites and parachuting untrained unemployment youth in classrooms. A media investigation by Groundnut and Viewfinder refuted DBE's claims to Parliament about a national reading program and found that the program is nothing but a collection of random, uncoordinated activities by provincial education departments with no proper monitoring. In fact, the DA-run Western Cape is the only province with a budgeted, implemented, and monitored reading plan, as well as their 1.2 billion back on track program to catch up learning losses. 111 million has been set aside for reading, specifically for Afrikaans and isiXhosa schools. That is why the Western Cape has doubled the number of learners that can read compared to the rest of the country. How are learners meant to eventually participate in the labor market if they can't understand what they read, a basic skill? Last year, the Department of Higher Education Labor Market Intelligence Program identified a lack of reading comprehension as a #1 skill deficit in the country's labor market. This is why 4.9 million young South Africans are unemployed. This is a national disaster, which will only get worse. Chairperson, the Minister and the DG therefore must present a catch-up and reading plan to Parliament with a budget-specific timelines in this APP, so they can be held accountable to stop the bloodbath of a generation of children who will be confined to a lifetime of poverty and unemployment. The ANC government is so dysfunctional and incompetent that it cannot even do the most simple things, building toilets, feeding children, or even keeping the lights on, let alone teaching children how to read. 29 years into our democracy, there are more than 5,000 schools with functional pit toilets and no credible plan this financial year to eradicate them. DBE has failed to meet every single ACD and SAFE target to eradicate pit toilets and other dangerous infrastructure in schools. And the goalposts have been shifted for the 4th time to 2025 now. When 4-year-old Langalam Vicky's tragic death in a school pit toilet is raised, the minister simply refers to the police investigation. The fact that police are investigating the circumstances of her death does not minimize the dehumanizing facilities Langalam was forced to use while still alive. I personally did an oversight visit to a school. The toilets are horrendous. The minister would certainly not use them, nor should she allow her grandchildren to use them. But the learners at Langalam School are still subjected to those conditions to this day. Sadly, in the last decade, we have lost 6 children to pit toilets under your watch. Schools are not meant to be the graveyards that this ANC government has turned them into. That is why, as the day we have launched an End School Pit Toilet campaign, and we'll be approaching the courts to ensure that each pit toilet is eradicated in our schools. More than 5,800 schools still have unreliable water supply. 400 mud schools still exist. 900 schools still have asbestos roofs. Yet the Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga departments retain 414 million meant to deal with unsafe infrastructure. This money was then given to provinces who can use it, like the Western Cape, who built a new school in 65 days. Yes, you heard me correctly, 65 days. While your department's infrastructure projects are delayed by an average of 27 months. Minister, it's high time your department looked at efficient models to quickly build schools of quality to eradicate dangerous infrastructure in schools. The National School Nutrition Program is another insult to injury that has been added. Learners at more than 10,000 schools in KZN and the Eastern Cape were forced to go hungry when the provincial departments failed to ensure provision of their daily meals. The KZN tender is now a subject of investigation. However, there's no indication that anyone will be held accountable for this travesty. And despite allegations that a family member of an official benefited to this tender, because with an ANC government, cadres must eat while children starve. Minister, an urgent audit of all these NSNP programs must be done to ensure that no other learners suffer the same fate. It is also high time that the department face the truth about matric results. A real matric pass rate of 54.6% is not good enough. Minister, your government's sole focus on quantity means nothing if quality and depth in education is out of the equation. Chairperson, the DA believes that education is a foundation of opportunity. Where we govern, more children stay in school, school infrastructure is built and maintained, children eat twice a day, budget is provided for catch-up plan and reading, quality teaching is monitored, and no child is at risk of dying in a pit toilet because we don't have them. That is why parents move here looking for better schooling. So, Minister, instead of taking offense when we offer best practice to you, embrace it for the sake of the future of this country. So, who through the ANC's education system are confined to a lifetime of poverty and unemployment. It's called political maturity.
Thank
Mama.
you.
It is, however, time to vote this ANC government out.
Thank
No
you.
kubatiniwe ngoku, sebekhathele. I thank you, Chairperson.
The Honorable Mashabela.
Thank you, Chairperson. 10 years ago, this generation of economic freedom fighters made a bold call to establish an economic emancipation movement as a means through which our people would be the core focus of all government actions. In the declaration of the National Assembly on what is to be done in 2013, we said, we gather on the 26th of July 2013 because we are inspired and agitated by the Cuban July 26 movement, which from the 26th of July 1953 launched a struggle that culminated in the victorious Cuban Revolution, which is still intact despite trade embargoes, isolation, natural disasters, and terrorism against the Cuban people. Cuba is amongst the best countries in terms of health care, education, low infant mortality rates, life expectancy, and other vital social services. This is a sign that the revolution was about the emancipation of the people, not the enrichment of few individuals who callously and rapaciously redirect state resources for self-enrichment. Today, 10 years later, we could not have made more correct call. We say this because there has never been a greater demand for a movement grounded in and amongst the people as is now. And that organization is the Economic Freedom Fighters. We reject this budget vote because it demonstrates a perpetuation of this government's long record of neglect of the basic education sector, and by extension, its neglect of the lives and future of millions of our children, whose future depends on their ability to acquire decent education today. Not only has the department failed to deliver basic infrastructure needs for conducive education of our children, it has also failed to ensure that it employs a sufficient number of qualified teachers to teach learners at acceptable teacher-learner ratios. This persists and is getting worse in the public education sector and eventually paints an inaccurate picture on the ability of learners coming out of private education and those in public education. The so-called low pass rates and dropouts in the public education sector are therefore structural and a product of the state ineptitude. Public schools do not have the necessary tools that private schools have to support teaching and learning. We were shocked to find that at present, the department has no data on the transition of learners from schools to TVETs, which may inflate what we view as dropping out. The department even opposed recommendation from civil society for ensuring that there is an Excel-based early warning system to detect dropouts at schools. They do this while they have no means of monitoring potential factors that contribute to dropping out and following up on those who actually do drop out of schools. Further, the department has paid scant regard to the concern of violence against girl learners at school, at schools located in rural areas. The department is caught napping each time there is a story of a girl learner who is sexually abused by a teacher. We must have inbuilt capacity to detect and prevent this from happening. It is for this reason that in our 2019 manifesto, we proposed that there must be a social worker and a psychologist at each school. Concerns about the price it would cost to have this at schools are superficial concerns. There is no price too high for the proper education and safety of our children. We need intense investments in improving the quality of public education. This includes massive investment in school infrastructure, learner support material, and cutting-edge technologies to enable our learners in the public education system to compete with their counterparts from anywhere else in the world. Our public education system must also be cognizant of the socioeconomic factors that hinder conducive education. It is for this reason that we have firmly advocated for each school to have a social worker, psychologist, and a cooperative system between teachers and the community to ensure the well-being of the learners. The Department of Basic Education is not concerned with any of these things. The EFF reject these budgets. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sonishwa Mema Josin.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The Department of Basic Education is a government department that is in charge of shaping the future of this country. Its success in achieving its output determines the overall development goals of government by educating our young people to achieve success. What is concerning with the way this department is run is that it still has perpetual overcrowding of learners in our public school system. In fact, the average class sits at about 31 learners to one teacher, including educators who have fewer students in their specialist teaching subjects. This leaves this figure to be much higher in real terms. It is no wonder that independent studies have revealed that about 80% of learners leaving grade 4 are unable to read for comprehension. The regression of literacy in South Africa is at a crisis stage, which requires immediate government interventions in order to effect a change. Yet there are little to no plans by the government to address this. Despite the clear problem facing this department in its budget, there is no specific national reading plan, no proper budget, no accurate reporting, and no progress on implementing vital interventions. It does not take an expert to tell us that part of the problem in schools is that the learning environment for many is unconducive. Learners' classrooms are overcrowded, insufficiently equipped with proper learning materials, and what little infrastructure exists is not maintained or very old. The government has, in its own admission, recognized these challenges and committed to fixing them, especially regarding the dangerous pit latrines, but as expected, they has failed to deliver on its promises to our people. Although the department has made available an online system of issuing lost and damaged matric certificates, to date, there is a lady, Nonhlanhla Machabaphala, who matriculated at Mafori High in Soweto, who has not received her matric certificate since from last year. This department has not come up with a timeous and a cost-effective way of handling the matter of those accused by being implicated in irregularities, such as cheating, copying during matric results. What this often means is that pupils spend resources, time, and money going out of court on seemingly never-ending court battles. There are instances of such which date back to almost a decade ago. In some instances, the department fails to provide tangible evidence, and this unfortunately translates to these groups of students not having a chance at bettering their lives by pursuing higher education with time and ultimately means they cannot get employment. We must bring to an end the perpetual poverty life cycle in which the non-issue of matric certificates will deliver. The process of replacing matric certificates is lengthy at it take up on a half year. Honorable Chairperson, procurement spend in South Africa stands at approximately 926 billion annually for the procurement of goods and services. It is vulnerable, fragile, and susceptible to corruption, which warrants greater control of legislation at the cost of turnaround times. Unfortunately, good financial controls is not always the case for the building of schools as well as infrastructure in schools, as there have been probes and investigation made into irregularities in tender awarded by the Department of Education throughout the country over the past decade. For example, 2 district municipalities in the Eastern Cape irregular awarded a 1.5 billion toilet tender, whilst in the same province, the Hawks arrested 10 people in connection with a 600 million tender fraud in the province. Members, as we are all aware that High Court recently ruled that schools, clinics, hospitals, and police stations are all to be exempted from load shedding, but the government intends to appeal this decision. Now, I would like to highlight some of the challenges that schools are faced with during load shedding, such as not having access to water and teaching and learning disruptions. I would like to ask what extreme stages of load shedding mean for our children, considering that there have been allegations that load shedding will go up to stage 10 this winter. We cannot continue to accept being led by a government that substandards programs, those that do not address the meaningful development needs of our children. Let us not forget that the basic education level for learners is most critical time of their educational development. By the time of tertiary education, it is too late to reform foundational skills that learners can use to further develop their academic
Thank you.
knowledge. The IFP supports the budget.
Thank you. The Honorable Dr. Boshoff. No, we only said it when you
Sorry.
start speaking.
Okay. Honorable Chair and Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, many people tend to judge the performance of this Department of Basic Education with preciously little accurate information. Let's look at a few of those. According to the World Economic Forum, South African mathematics education is at the bottom of the ladder. Yet it is based on the perception of business leaders, not on a real survey. It is often said that only half of grade 1s reach grade 12 without considering how many exit the school system in favor of FET colleges. A popular allegation is that 30% is a pass in South Africa, while the reality is that the learner is allowed to have one subject with a minimum of 30% without failing the whole year, and that had been so before 1994, although that was 33%. Many say that standards fell, but I shall eat my hat if anyone who matriculated in 1994 or before will pass grade 12 mathematics today using their old textbooks. I find it frustrating because I'm an opposition politician and there's much to criticize. But before one does that, one has to get inaccurate perceptions out of the way. Now, maybe this is time to turn to the reading report that the Honourable Minister dealt with in her speech. Die kort weergawe van hierdie verslag is dat 81% van graad 4's en 56% van graad 6's nie met begrip kan lees nie. En hierdie verslag is deur die departement self in Suid-Afrika gepubliseer, waarvoor 'n mens eintlik die departement wil gelukwens dat hy so 'n moeilike verslag bekend gestel het. Dit verander nie die feite nie. Afrikaanse kinders, die beste presteerders in hierdie leestoets, is steeds onder die wêreldgemiddeld. Ons kinders is skerp, dit is nie die probleem nie. Dit help nie om hierdie afname in prestasie aan COVID toe te skryf nie. Oor die tyd was dit nie veel beter nie. Die probleem is dat 'n land se bevolking die staatsopset, die konstitusionele bedeling daarvan en die onderwysstelsel in samehang met mekaar moet wees. Maar in Suid-Afrika is dit nie. 11 amptelike tale erken die verskeidenheid van ons bevolking, maar dis waar dit eindig. Prakties het hierdie land net een amptelike taal en dit is Engels. Die wortels lê in die Britse beleid van indirect rule wat 'n klein swart bevolking in elke kolonie as swart Engelse wou opvoed om die kolonie later namens Brittanje te regeer. Engels het die taal van ekonomiese vooruitgang geword en ander tale is tot die private lewe beperk. Kom ons noem dit smal gebaseerde swart bemagtiging. Narrow-based black empowerment. Dit bevoordeel die min en laat die baie aan hulle eie lot oor. Dit is 'n durende erfenis. Dit het wel daartoe gelei dat Engels die taal van die bevrydingsstryd, van die struggle was en pogings van die vorige regering om moedertaalonderrig aan te stel is as verdeel en heers verwerp. Nou is graad 4 bes moontlik die laaste keer wat kinders hulle eie taal in druk gaan sien. Daarom kies ouers maklik liewers vir Engelse onderrig en kinders leer gevolglik in 'n vreemde taal om te lees. Of hulle leer dit in hulle eie taal, maar gesofistikeerde gebruik van die taal word nooit ontwikkel nie en selfs die basiese vaardighede verroes. Die Engelssprekende black identiteit het dalk vir die deel en heers besweer, maar vir ander tale word dit verenig en verdwyn, unite and disappear. Die uiteinde van die storie is dat die departement van basiese onderwys leerplanne vir robotika ontwikkel, maar nog nie kan verseker dat alle of daarin die meeste kinders met begrip kan leer lees of basiese wiskundige vaardighede onder die knie kry nie. Verder wil die departement die magte van skoolbeheerliggame knip, ongeag die prestasies van skole onder hulle beheer. Hoër onderwys daarenteen het 'n nuwe beleid wat die onafhanklike besluitnemingsbevoegdheid van hoër onderwysinstellings grond op hulle akademiese en bestuursvermoë. Die onderskeid tussen openbare en onafhanklike instellings verval in alle opsigte buiten befondsing. Basiese onderwys benodig iets soortgelyk. Lui die doodsklok vir die Bella-bil, wat beheerliggame se vlekkies knip. Skryf 'n nuwe onderwyswet met 'n onafhanklike onderwysreguleerder, pleks van 'n departement wat rolspeler en reguleerder is. Erken kulturele verskeidenheid in onderwys. Help dan die skole waar kinders tans nie ordentlik lees en skryf nie. Hervorm die konstitusionele bedeling, want as die staat net Engels is, help veeltalige onderwys niks. Gebruik inheemse tale in die staatsdiens. Vereis dat nuwe staatsamptenare ten minste 2 inheemse tale magtig is. Skep 'n toekoms vir elke taal in Suid-Afrika. Ek dank u.
Baie dankie. Agbare lidsoekers.
Honorable Chair, the ACDP rise today to address the concerning state of our education system. Our children are the future of our nation, and the quality of their education is paramount to our prosperity. However, the current situation reveals that our education system is not in safe hands. The Department of Basic Education does not conduct adequate research, leaving us with insufficient knowledge to determine whether the department is implementing appropriate programs. The lack of appropriate targets and metrics on issues such as dropout rates and school closures obscures what is actually happening in our education system. The recent collapse of the National School Nutrition Program in KZN and our abysmal reading scores are a testament to the department's inability to deliver on its goals. Yet, the DBE is seeking more power through the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill. Our people, however, recognize that the department and the ruling parties' lack of policies that can rescue the education